Well, good Tuesday morning, friends. Mark Holmes here, of course, with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo, as well as Joe Bear in the house. And as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. Let's get open for business here, and let's wake up the football gods. You know what's kind of cool? I wake up early in the morning, partially because I'm old and you got to pee a lot when you get old. I had a conversation with Tone, another person out there who is really a very busy person, incredible attorney in Texas, and a great friend and supporter of the channel. He said something this morning. We were having a conversation back and forth. And he said this, and it just really struck home. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. It literally blew my mind away. And it's true. You know, so many times people are so busy about chasing this, that, and the other in life. You know, we're all driven by, trying to make our kingdom, to make all this money and everything else. And at the end of the day, we lose sight of what is important. We get so focused in on mundane bullshit that we waste the time that we have. We spend so much time hating others that's all you got. And see, that's where we need to really take a lesson. Shout out to you this morning, Tony, because that just really changes the perspective. If you spend all your time with the people that hate you, or you spend all your time hating with others, that's all you got. In a way, you choose to have your happiness. You know, I'm happy. I'm not satisfied, but I'm happy having watched my team go 12 and 5, 2 years in a row. Having gotten better. You know, we didn't get over the hump of the San Francisco 49ers, but having watched them take steps and try to get better. So many people will focus in on, oh, Dak's not the guy. You know, same old Cowboys, Jerry. And it's just like, why waste your time being unhappy about something you can't control? Be satisfied with some of the things that you have. Be the guy, half glass full. Just kind of struck me really good this morning. So I've got a doctor's appointment this morning in my hearing. I've had this ringing in my ears for a couple of years now. That's just kind of, it's really annoying. I almost like having white noise, so to speak, having a ceiling fan on or a fan on, so that way it kind of drowns it out. So, I'm probably going deaf from all the years of power tools and listening to Eagle fans and stuff, that they finally just, destroyed my hearing. So I'm going to get that test this morning. And then we're picking up the SUV that we will be calling, I don't know what we're going to call her, but it's going to be the Joe Boo's mothership for this trip. We are going to Kansas City tomorrow. I cannot wait to get my man DMV, David Wiley. Game time, we're hitting the road. We're going to see Primetime Phil there on Thursday. We're going to see my man Randy and his son and everything else. We're going to watch the Dallas Cowboys draft players and or trade for some. I'm going to be the guy who believes that, as I believe it is that Jerry Jones says, deadlines make deals get done. The draft is Thursday, the day after tomorrow. There's still some deals out there that have to get done one way or the other. DeAndre Hopkins, forgive me. I know I'm just Joe the fan, okay? I am Joe the fan. I don't pretend that I have the wherewithal to be the general manager of the Cowboys. I have my own ideas and thoughts and things, but the reality is until you're under that pressure cooker of having to make those picks and stuff, there's not a lot of people that can actually do what they do. We can all be armchair quarterbacks and say, you should have done this, that, and the other, especially after the fact when you have more data to show how stupid you were. You know, when you looked at Zeke Elliott versus Jalen Ramsey, at the time you looked at it and said, well, Zeke is definitely the guy. When you looked at Alex Smith versus Aaron Rodgers, and you looked at those two, at the time, you know, Alex Smith did have better things. But reality is when you get to football, who knows what's going to happen? So you don't know what you don't know. But it's easy after the fact to say, oh, there were idiots for doing that. Well, there were a lot of other people that were on board with exactly what they were doing as well, and just ended up being that they were all wrong. But the Arizona Cardinals, who it just seems like Arizona has just kind of lost everything, that they have no direction whatsoever, and the players want to get out of there. Budda Baker wants to leave. DeAndre Hopkins, who ended up with this big contract cap hit that's about $30 million. The Cardinals want to make a deal. They have to make a deal. They recognize that their team is starting over, that maybe they made a mistake at the coach who's already making up lies and stories out there, that maybe they're in a bit of trouble, and at least let's not pay $30 million for the receiver. Let's go ahead and move on. We don't have our quarterback because he's injured. We got a new coach. We're rebuilding. We need to get some draft capital. We need to cut some of these big contracts and move forward. Well, you want to get those draft picks now, right now. And so now your asking price goes down as far as draft compensation. Your willingness to eat some of the contract. It's better for you to trade and do like the Texans did and say, you know what, we'll eat $6 million of Brandon Cook's contract as opposed to the whole thing. We'll take a 5th-round pick as opposed to cutting him, getting nothing, and taking the big cap hit. And that's where, right now, the Arizona Cardinals are. Arizona Cardinals are right there, and it's time to either shit or get off the toilet. Here was about 3 weeks ago on Pat McAfee show, kind of the word on the idea of what might happen.
So obviously OBJ, we don't know what's going on there. He had the meetings at the league meetings at the league meetings.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Separate.
After he dapped up Stefanski, and then you said, hey, what up, and dapped him up. And then Salah, Joe Douglas. We heard the story. We're not going back through it. Odell Beckham Jr. has not been signed. Allegedly, he wants $15 million a year. You can get, we don't know if that's true. We've heard a multiple number. It was 20, now it's 15. He's come out and said, what? I'm just not taking 3 or something like that. So we don't know his actual number. And then it's also being alleged that D-Hop is going to be released from the Cardinals, potentially. I think that was reported either today or yesterday, and I might have been wrong when I read that. I might have got duped.
No, it was ML football, though, so you got to take it with a grain of salt.
Per
Albert Breer.
Per Albert Breer. Okay, so I read it on the internet. I might have got duped. It might be completely wrong. But would D-Hop and OBJ potentially be in the same spots? There would only be a few. How many teams are really looking into the veteran wide receiver market? And are they both coming to the Colts? That's sweet.
I would be surprised if DeAndre Hopkins was released. I've been surprised before.
Okay.
But based on what I know, I would be surprised if he's.
He knows he's tied in there at Arizona. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we know that.
Hey,
it won't be released.
Saying it would be rarely do very good players, and his salary is it seems fine. Like
17?
Still very good
it's not
player.
terrible.
But didn't we hear? No, I don't remember.
And
we'll hear tomorrow.
Look, he still could be traded. We'll see what happens. He still could be traded. If he was traded, his salary would be adjusted.
There it is.
Maybe even potentially if he's back, it could get adjusted. We'll see. But I think that situation is still sorting itself out.
Okay, so the thought being here is that his contract could be adjusted. Now, I know a lot of people say, oh, well, we're good at receiver. We're good. I keep looking at this and saying you got CD, is your number one guy outside. Brandon Cooks is really a deep threat. I don't know that Michael Gallup is the slot guy. He's kind of a deep threat as well. And I'm going to say something that you may or may not agree with, but Michael Gallup, do we believe that Michael Gallup is really as good as advertised? Michael Gallup had an incredible year in 2019, 66 catches, 1,107 yards, 16.8 yard average. That was great. But since that time, Michael Gallup has kind of fallen off the wayside here. 59 catches, 843, 14.3 per average. Dropped by 2.5 yards. The next year, almost cut in half to 445 yards, 35 catches, 12.7 yards. Dropped almost another 2 yards. And last year, 424 yards. Now, we know coming off the ACL injury, 10.9. You went from his long being 62 to 55 to 41 to 27. Now, I believe he'll be better than where he was, but do we believe that he's going to be the 2019 Michael Gallup? Or maybe the 2020? There's a major difference of 16.8 yards versus 10.9. There's a big difference of 62 as your long versus 27. I don't mean to throw shade at all, but I'm just looking at this and saying, I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. But that's where I look at it and say, DeAndre Hopkins with Dak Prescott can be that man in the middle who can catch everything there. And ultimately, you want to make sure that you've got great matchups, that you've got great guys, that you turn around and they literally say, wow, who are we going to stop? If we try and focus in on CD, boom, you go to Hopkins. You focus in on Hopkins, you go deep with Brandon Cooks. If you happen to get all those covered, maybe you draft yourself a tight end. Because ultimately, you need to have multiple pieces around to be able to deliver the football. And for me, if the Cowboys were to make that move, much like the Eagles did with A.J. Brown, it changes the offense completely. It makes it so you're going to have a hard time stopping them. Just would. And if you were to make that move, and you can get it for a 4th or 5th round pick, then you focus in on the offensive lineman, you focus in on the defensive tackle, you focus in on the tight end, and now all of a sudden, man, you have a killer team. It's the move that I would be trying to make. So we're going to listen to Get Up This Morning, Factor Fishing, about the best player in the draft.
Jackson will still be a Raven by the end of the draft. Would that be fact or fiction?
This would be fact, Greeny, unless something just absolutely jaw-dropping happens and a team decides to make the conversation or the phone call to them and they like one of the quarterbacks that potentially is left somewhere around 4 in the draft. He's going to be a Raven. I don't know if he's going to play for them this year, but I think come the end of the draft, he'll be a Raven.
RG3, let me come to you on Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas. If I said he's the best player in the draft, is that fact or fiction?
Oh, that's a Snapple Cap fact right there. Bijan Robinson does everything from the running back position. He can catch the ball in the backfield, run inside and outside. He had 183 broken tackles the last 2 years in college football. The next closest guy had 123. Bijan Robinson is the real deal Holyfield.
I like that one, too. And then, Mel, let's talk about C.J. Stroud. If I said he's going to fall past 3 in this draft, would that be fact or fiction?
I have no idea where C.J. Stroud's going to go. I have no clue. I think if he's not going to go 2, if he's not going 2, guys, I'm just being honest right now. I'm being totally honest. I couldn't even give you a guess because at that 3rd spot, who trades in there? They trade in there for Stroud. They trade in there for Levis. They trade in there for Richardson. That's what is going to make Thursday night fun and mysterious and great if we don't know and we can't predict it. And I have no idea right now what's going to happen at that spot.
Sometimes I don't know is the best answer, and we need to learn that. I like it a lot. For the record, the Vegas odds makers are now projecting Will Levis to be the 2nd pick in this draft, which would certainly be a significant change from what we saw. But I don't trust them. I trust Kimberly Martin. Kmart, my insider extraordinaire. Talk to me about C.J. Stroud.
I mean, it is just wild, Greeny. I know every time around this time, there's just some sort of a guy seems to be falling. But when I've had conversations over the years, in the months leading up to the drafts, a lot of football evaluators say, are guys falling? Or are you guys just catching up to information we already had? Or, as Chris Ballard, the Colts GM, said recently, everybody's lying. That's why this week is so fascinating, because C.J. Stroud went from presumptive number 1 to all of a sudden, where is he going to go? And you have a team like the Texans who literally could do a multitude of things because they could go QB. I feel like this is a franchise that needs a QB, but they're also picking at 12. So they could wait for that QB.
That's the point. I mean, a month ago, we thought he was going to be the first pick in the draft. Obviously, he's played 4 games since then. Oh, no, wait a minute. He hasn't played any games since then. And suddenly he went from being the number 1 pick to being dropping like the way this is. So I don't understand what's going on. RG3, help me. When you stack the quarterbacks, we haven't heard from you yet in the show. When you stack the quarterbacks in this draft, where is C.J. Stroud in your pecking order?
Well, C.J. Stroud's the 2nd best quarterback in this draft, and I'm trying to figure out, am I losing my mind? Am I losing my senses? When did C.J. Stroud become a guy that was going to drop outside of the top 2 or 3 into the top 10? This guy was arguably going to be the number 1 pick in the draft just a couple weeks ago. So whoever's putting out all these rumors and all these stories, you got to take it with a grain of salt, because it is 100% lying season when you get this close to the draft. But C.J. Stroud, when you talk about a quarterback, this guy on 3rd down the last 2 years, 85 conversions, only 7 sacks. That is elite level decision making. He's going to allow you to win games now and to win games later. So all I sit here and say is, how, Sway? How can we sit here and say that he's not the 2nd best quarterback in the draft? You watch the tape like I do, and you'll understand that he is.
All right, so we have tape. Danny, you've got tape on C.J. Stroud. Show us, for the folks who haven't taken this close look, what C.J. Stroud is.
I think he's elite when it comes to pre-snap plan, post-snap execution. There's a lot of noise around him right now, to RG3's point about processing, right? That's the buzzword around the draft. His tape tells me he can process as good as you need for Sunday afternoons. Penn State threw a ton of stuff at him. Okay, he gets the line of scrimmage. He sees an internal pressure. He starts communicating to his offensive line, I want you guys to go here. But that unblocked receiver's got to be an answer. He's pointing to that guy right there like, hey, that's our responsibility. Now what happens is that if that internal pressure comes, if that linebacker blitzes and the defensive end also rushes the quarterback, he points to that receiver saying, hey, you replace them. That's the answer. That's our guy that we have to catch and throw on. 1st down and 10 becomes 27-yard gain. Greeny, I could put on this Penn State game and you would see Star Wars defenses getting thrown to C.J. Stroud. He handled them. Iowa game, Wisconsin game. So for all the noise that's going around about him right now, it makes me sit there and say, I either have no clue what I'm looking at in tape, that's not the case, or the tape is what the reality of what C.J. Stroud's ability is, and I think that's what teams have to really lean on.
Look, Mel, no one has lived through this more than you have. This is Mel's 40th draft for ESPN.
And he still
45th
stinks.
overall doing what you do, evaluating these guys. He's hardly the first player that when we get to the draft time, all of a sudden there's all these questions. They just appear out of nowhere, right, Mel? We've seen this happen many times before.
We have, Greeny, and I think you go back even to Aaron Rodgers. 3 weeks before that draft, we had Aaron Rodgers going number 1 over Alex Smith. And then draft comes, he doesn't go number 1, he drops into the 20s with the 24. You think about the draft when Josh Allen came out, right? And Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. With Sam Darnold, Josh Allen. The night before the draft, I submit my final mock draft. Josh Allen, my number 1 player in the draft, he's going number 1, right? I come down for breakfast the next morning for our meeting, and there's Adam and Mort saying Baker Mayfield. I'm thinking, I can't even eat my breakfast now. I can't even relax now. It's not Josh Allen. He dropped to 7, and Buffalo traded up to get him. I mean, he dropped to 7 when he was going to go number 1, I thought, the night before the daggone draft.
Goes
and
to
Buffalo
show you
went
don't
up
know what you're talking
aggressively
about.
and got him from 12 to 7. Justin Fields was my QB, too. He drops, and what did Chicago do? They go from 20 to 11 to get Justin Fields. How'd that work out? Okay, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, 2 best quarterbacks from that draft. So for me, Josh Allen, best quarterback in that draft. Lamar Jackson went into the first round, second best quarterback in that draft. So the bottom line is, guys, hey, they're not always going to be stacked properly. And that's the way the draft goes. They're always not going to come off the board. Just because it comes off the board a certain way doesn't mean it's going to play out that way once they're in the National Football League.
Which is true. You don't know what you don't know. The best thing to do is kick back, relax, and enjoy. I'm Mark Holmes, and I appreciate each and every one of you guys.
Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Sports Report.
You did one hell of a job, and the only thing else I got to say is, how about them Cowboys?